With the rest of the Liga getting underway, Barcelona suited up against Nàstic Tarragona in some preseason action at the Estadi Johan Cruyff. Bayern was only a few weeks ago, so my hope was that this would at least be a palate cleanser where we learn some things about how Ronald Koeman will set up his team. So I guess it's time for the overreactions, the overanalyzing, and the first match review of the season. This match winds up being rather simple to review because Koeman opted for an 11 in the first half and a completely different 11 in the second. Now before we get to the actual match, we should mention who wasn't in the squad list, and what is learned from that. Pjanic and Todibo, who both are recovering from COVID-19, were training on their own prior to the match. More on where Pjanic would fit later. As for Todibo, he probably would have featured over Jorge Cuenca in the second half, or if he's due to be sold, he wouldn't have featured in this match at all, so not much to learn there. Juan Miranda, Es Moriba, and Arnau Tenas were named to the squad but didn't feature in the game. No surprises there either, honestly. Moriba is getting good experience with the first team in preseason, and at 17, he's quite a ways down the depth chart. As for Miranda, he's clearly the third choice left back, and I can't see the club holding on to him to have him never play this season. As for Monchu and Oriol Busquets, they were not named to the squad list and were actually sent down to train with Barca B midweek, so I think we have some idea of their futures too, unfortunate as that is. Not at the Camp Nou this season, whether that's a loan or a sale. Luis Suarez, Arturo Vidal, and Rafinha not featuring, and that would confirm what we were all wondering, that these three will be gone soon. Anyway, back to who actually played, starting logically with the first half. Barca lined up with what I would say was 7 to 9 starters plus Pedri and Carlos Alenya. At this point, I have to mention that the biggest disappointment of the day was not related to anything on the field, but the issues with Barca TV+. I was able to watch the first half, but finally got to tune in right after Dembélé scored. There was a nice dummy by Pedri on the play, and that replay of the goal was my first introduction to the 17-year-old as a Barca first-teamer outside of training footage. And I guess I can't pat myself and Frances too much on the back for guessing Koeman would play a 4-2-3-1. Not only was that his preferred formation with the Netherlands, but Bayern has been showcasing that it's the in formation right now, and Barca does have a squad that largely suits that formation, with a few players needing to learn slightly new positions. So without further ado, the first half formation was Neto in net, Alba, Lenglet, Piqué, Roberto at the back, Busquets and Alenya in the double pivot, then Dembélé on the left, Messi in the middle, and Pedri on the right with Griezmann up top. Neto will be starting over Iñaki Peña in place of Ter Stegen to start the season, so I think that's why he probably got a run out with the regular starters. Now switching to the other side of the formation, there was a ton of movement up top, particularly between Messi and Pedri, and this is the spot where I can mention the first tactical wrinkle of the new season. Nàstic never really had any prolonged possession, but on the rare occasion they did, Pedri would defend more centrally with Griezmann dropping back with him almost to make it a 4-2-3-1, with Dembélé actually even deeper defending. But don't think of it as a low or medium block. It was pressing and trying to win the ball back. The one time when they didn't really press was when we saw Busquets and Alenya get caught in no man's land, and Nàstic Bonilla got the opponent's only goal. For Busquets and Alenya, this is certainly preseason at new positions, and I'm not going to read too much into the issues I saw there. Neither were particularly comfortable, and movement and spacing were all big issues, though I expect improvement as they get more comfortable with Koeman's tactics, and I also expect De Jong and Pjanic to be the starters anyway, which in theory does give Busquets and Alenya more time to learn the positions. Having Roberto at right back does answer something I think we knew all along. If Alenya is staying, plus the addition of Pjanic and more minutes for Puig, Roberto is going to be more useful as a right back this season again. With the club seemingly uninterested in bringing in a right back and transfer money hard to come by, I think Kool-Aid should expect to see a rotation in Roberto and Semedo once again at right back. I would guess that Semedo is still the starter, but that would mean that Roberto is a regular bench player, and that I also am not so sure of, being Roberto is a captain and the role he's played over the last few seasons. As I said, preseason is the perfect time to overanalyze. And speaking of overanalyzing, I don't want to read too much into Pedri's showing, other than that he looks like he belongs. His movement was good, and his positioning was good enough for being 17, and joining a new squad a few weeks ago. He said after the match that, quote, "My dream of playing for Barcelona with Messi came true today." And it wasn't just that, he looked natural next to Messi. Messi didn't want to stay at Barca, and Messi himself said he wanted to leave to hand over the baton. But a silver lining that you can even see from this match is that these youngsters get to have 1 year learning and playing with Messi, and they could all be much better for it. As for Dembélé, it was just nice to see him back on the field. He had the goal, and it was a perfect Ousmane Dembélé goal. The ball bounced in a fortuitous way through traffic, and he used a touch that looked like it wasn't on purpose, but also you never know with him, and he converted it. I thought it would be Pedri on the left and Dembélé on the right, but what do I know? Both can play on either side, and I still think Dembélé is a starter on the right when Fati is back. That is certainly something to look out for come the match against Girona if Fati is back in time. As for the rest, there is not much we can learn from Neto, Piqué, Alba, Lenglet, Messi, and Griezmann that we don't already know. They all look like they were in second gear, which is completely fine in a preseason match against a third division side that wants to hack you to bits. Messi dropped deep at times, Griezmann checked to the ball regularly, and some better chemistry out on the wings probably would have helped out some. With this lineup, it will continue to frustrate me that the fullbacks, Alba and Roberto in this case, are limited in their ability to dribble at defenders. Alba can do it sometimes, but I think we'll continue to see less and less of that. Griezmann also got a goal from the penalty spot, thought I would mention that just to have it on record. That was probably the moment in the game when Nàstic knew that a friendly upset wasn't going to happen. Now time for the overreactions, because we are on to the second half. Iñaki Peña in net, Junior Firpo, Jorge Cuenca, Araujo, and Nelson Semedo with the captain's armband at the back, De Jong and Puig as the double pivot, Konrad de la Fuente, Coutinho, and Trincão in front of them, and Martin Braithwaite up top. Interesting to note as well that Semedo got the captain's armband because of all those players in the second half, he has played the most seasons for FC Barcelona. So right out of the gate, another question was seemingly answered. Puig may not be in competition with Messi and Coutinho for the spot behind the striker. Instead, he'll be competing for what is realistically one of the two midfield spots. Yes, 5 subs means that he could feature in practically every match, but to start, he'll have to beat out one of De Jong, Pjanic, Busquets, and Alenya. Using a preseason overreaction, Puig looks more ready to play in a double pivot than Busquets. However, Puig was playing next to De Jong, who Koeman has said is one of the reasons for the formation change, so that De Jong can play in his most natural position. And against the Segunda Division B side, De Jong looked tremendous. Dribbling into space from deep, quick diagonal passing on the floor, snuffing out counterattacks, and supporting the youthful press up top. I know De Jong is a known commodity, and this is what Kool-Aid thought they were getting last year, but De Jong's performance next to Puig was my biggest positive takeaway from the match. As for Trincão and Konrad de la Fuente, the two other players that I was watching quite closely, both showcase some of the things that they do well, and also the things that they still need to improve. For Trincão, his positioning and movement for the first 20 minutes or so of the second half was very similar to what I saw from him at Braga. He doesn't set up on the touchline, but a few yards in. That way he can wait on a diagonal ball, and depending on the positioning of that pass, he has room to either take himself outside or collect it with his left boot as he tends to do and change direction to cut back inside. That was the move that you'll see in the highlights, and his prior runs that took him wide helped to set that up. That move also happened because he and Semedo started to get more comfortable with one another. Semedo is always tentative to get forward, and just like the other 3 fullbacks, doesn't often go one-on-one and beat a defender. But once Semedo started making a few overlapping runs and they got their timing down, things opened up for Trincão, and you could see his confidence building. I know he's about 3 years older than Fati and Pedri, but those two are just different, and Trincão is in a really good spot to contribute as a 20-year-old. As for Konrad on the other side, and you all know how excited I am to see an American debut for Barcelona, he had the kind of showing that continues to impress and solidify his place on the depth chart. He will be a main figure for Barca B this year, but expect him to make the first team bench and get the occasional appearance, especially for a cup game. He's behind all the first team wingers obviously, Fati, Dembélé, Pedri, Trincão, but they aren't necessarily the most invincible bunch health-wise. There will come a point when I stop saying it, but the leap he's made this past season is remarkable. Going from almost signing with a club in Germany because there were things in his game holding him back, to being the next player in the queue to make their official first team debut. We saw the player that he has become. He can press, a skill that has improved leaps and bounds recently. He does like to play in behind in the space between the center back and the right back, and he can run at least Segunda Division B defenders and get a cross off, even if he does need to improve the accuracy of said crossing. He wasn't connecting well with Braithwaite, but again, it is preseason, and I think he could become really dangerous in the box too, as he continues to work on his positioning there. A few times he and Braithwaite weren't on the same page with their movement close to goal, and Barca probably could have had 1 or 2 others if they were. As for Braithwaite and Coutinho, they are more known commodities, so I'll probably have more to say about them later. Coutinho did get his goal through a penalty, meaning all of Barca's biggest signings scored in this match, and I did like to see his desire to win the ball back. Same for Braithwaite, but that was expected. Having Coutinho be the backup at the attacking midfielder spot is what he did at Bayern, and what I suggested, and I think Koeman may be brave enough to do it. But before any of that, I think we need to see him play alongside Griezmann and Messi, because I'm very curious as to how that will all work out. Barca had so much possession in the second half that there isn't much more to say about Peña and the back line, save that I would love to see more from Junior Firpo. He at least needs to give Alba proper competition for the starting role if Barca aren't bringing in another fullback and moving him on. I don't know why, but he looks so much slower on overlapping runs than he did at Betis. Part of that is how much more space he had to go and chase down the ball down the flanks, but I still think a refined version of that player is in there somewhere, and I'm hoping we get to see him soon. If Todibo winds up being the plans for this season, Cuenca's role as the 5th center back hasn't changed. He's left-footed, unlike Araujo and Todibo, and he's still 20, but his ceiling is considerably lower than the former two, even when playing on his natural side. For Araujo, I want to see more chances with line-breaking balls, and I have to say, his passing has improved since he arrived in Catalonia, but Araujo doesn't hurt you for what he does because he does a lot of things well. But he can hurt Barca for what he doesn't do, which above all else is playing those long balls and opening up the field. All in all, I think these are more than enough talking points to think about from this preseason friendly. With the rest of the Liga already started, I actually don't think Koeman is experimenting that much. I think what we saw against Nàstic is similar to what Koeman wants from this team. How quickly they can all get comfortable with it, and the front four put on their scoring boots, the better Barca will start the season. Before that though, I'll see you this week for the podcast and the preseason match against Girona. And until then, give this video a like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications, and as always, Forza Barca.